Rain fell heavily from a dark sky that afternoon. The road outside the city was muddy and cold. A young woman ran through the rain, holding up her long white wedding dress that was now soaked and heavy. Her name was Lily Warren. Her golden hair was sticking to her face, and her heart was beating fast. She was running away from a life she had never wanted. Her wedding had been planned by her father, not by her heart. The ceremony had been full of guests wearing jewels, smiling and taking pictures. The man waiting for her at the altar was rich, powerful, and much older than she was. He smiled at her like she was a prize to be displayed, not a woman to be loved. Lily's father had called the marriage a merger, not a union. "This is not about love," he had said. "It is about the future of our families." Those words had echoed in Lily's mind all morning like a curse. At the back door of the mansion, she had found a moment when no one was looking. She had taken off her veil, thrown away her bouquet, and run. The wedding guests were still cheering inside, unaware that the bride had vanished. Now, her shoes slipped on wet gravel as she stumbled down an empty road. Her phone was wet and dead from the rain. Her dress caught on branches, and her hands were covered in mud. Still, she kept running. She told herself she would rather be lost in a storm than trapped in a golden cage. After a while, she reached a small path that led to the open countryside. Farms surrounded her, and there were no more city lights. Her heart pounded with both fear and hope. For the first time in years, she was alone and free, but she didn't know where to go. The rain hit her face harder now. Her breath came out in short gasps, and her body shivered. She whispered to herself that she could not stop. She thought of her mother, who had once told her that real happiness needed courage. Lily wanted that courage now. Up ahead, the sound of an engine broke through the noise of the rain. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Lily froze for a moment. It could be her father's men. They would drag her back to the mansion before nightfall. She moved quickly toward the trees, hiding behind thick bushes. The vehicle slowed down as it came closer. It was not a black luxury car, but an old pickup truck. The paint was faded, and the engine made a rough sound. The driver stopped when he saw a figure by the side of the road. The man stepped out of the truck. He was tall, lean, and dressed in work clothes covered in oil stains. His hands looked rough from long hours of labor. His name was Luke Turner, a local mechanic who worked at a small garage nearby. He blinked through the rain and took a step nearer to the girl. "Hey," he called. "You all right there, miss?" Lily hesitated, but then nodded weakly. Her lips were pale, and her voice shook when she spoke. "I need to get away from here," she said. "Please, can you help me?" Luke looked around. There was no car following her, no sign of danger, except for the storm. He could tell she was scared, but her eyes carried something strange. They were the eyes of someone running from a secret world. He offered his coat to her. "Get inside the truck. I'll catch your death out here." Lily climbed into the truck, her dress dragging water onto the seat. Luke noticed the fine fabric and frowned in confusion. "You come from some party or something?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Something like that." He started the engine again and drove carefully through the flooded road. The inside of the truck smelled of gasoline and wet leather. Lily sighed, pressing her hands together to keep warm. She looked out the window and watched the city lights disappear behind them. She didn't know this man, but he felt safe. For the first time that day, her heartbeat slowed. Luke glanced at her several times. She looked fragile but proud. Everything about her said she didn't belong to this simple world of rain, rust, and mud. Yet he didn't ask many questions. He had learned that sometimes people just needed kindness, not curiosity. After an hour, he stopped in front of a small garage made of brick and tin. "This is my place," he said. "Can stay inside until the rain stops." Lily looked at the garage doors and then back at him. "Thank you," she whispered. As they stepped inside, the sound of rain softened against the roof. The smell of oil, metal, and old tools filled the air. Luke handed her a towel and pointed to a small wooden chair near a heater. She sat down, hugging herself for warmth. He busied himself with the kettle, boiling water for tea. Neither of them spoke for a while. The storm outside kept roaring, but inside the little garage, it was quiet and calm. Lily watched the sparks from the small heater glow orange. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, yet at that moment she felt safer than she ever had among riches. Luke didn't know who she was, and that was the best gift fate had given her so far. The morning after the storm, the air smelled of wet soil and new beginnings. The garage looked different under the daylight. Puddles covered the ground outside, and the sky was washed clean. Lily sat on a stool near the door, wrapped in an old jacket that Luke had found for her. She looked small but peaceful as she watched him work on a dusty car engine. Every now and then, she would steal a glance at him, wondering how someone could look so calm and steady while surrounded by noise and clutter. Luke hummed softly while tightening a bolt. He had seen many strange things passing through his place, but never a woman in a wedding dress asking for help. He did not bother her with questions that night, but now his eyes carried a quiet curiosity. Still, he respected the silence that hung between them. She had told him her name was Lena, short and simple. He figured it might not be her real name, but it did not matter to him. Everyone had a reason for hiding something. When he offered her a cup of coffee, she smiled shyly. Her fingers trembled slightly when she took the cup. The warmth felt good after such a cold night. "You saved me," she said softly. "You have no idea how much that means." Luke shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. She looked down and whispered, "No, not everyone would have stopped." He noticed the way she looked around the garage, fascinated by tools and broken parts like a child visiting a new world. She had never seen a place like this before. Her world had always been one of glass walls, polished tables, and carefully chosen words. Here everything was simple, rough, and real. By noon, Luke suggested she rest in the small room behind the garage. It had a narrow bed and an old cupboard, but it was dry and safe. She thanked him and promised she would not be a burden.
Oh, baby.
He shook his head and told her she was welcome. Something in his voice made her chest feel warm. For 2 days the rain kept falling, and she stayed there. Luke worked, and she helped him however she could. At first, she was clumsy with the tools. She dropped a wrench and almost spilled paint, but Luke never got angry. Instead, he laughed and said, "Everyone has to start somewhere." His quiet patience made her bolder. She asked him about his life, and he told her he grew up in this town, fixing cars with his uncle. Now, the old man was gone, and the garage was his only treasure. Money was always short, but he seemed content. In return, Lena told small pieces of her story, keeping her real identity hidden. She said she had left a home where people decided things for her. She said she wanted to find out what life meant when it was simple. Luke listened without asking for more. His eyes showed understanding instead of surprise. One afternoon, while she swept the floor, a customer arrived with a broken van. The man looked twice at her, confused to see such a fine-looking woman working in a garage. Lily blushed and looked down. Luke stepped in quickly, taking over the talk. After the man left, she laughed nervously. "I probably don't fit here, do I?" Luke smiled. "Maybe not, but you make the place look better." She laughed again, her heart unexpectedly light. As the days went by, their rhythm became easy and comfortable. They cooked simple meals together, sitting on overturned crates, because there were no proper chairs. They shared stories of their childhoods. Lily found herself telling him about sneaking out of her fancy boarding school to eat hot dogs from street carts, while he told her about fishing trips when he was a boy. The difference between their worlds felt less heavy now. One night, the generator failed and the lights went out. Luke brought out a lantern, and its glow filled the garage with a warm yellow light. They sat close near the heater to keep warm. Outside, the rain started again, soft and steady. Lily watched the play of light on his face. His hands were rough and strong, his eyes kind. There was nothing polished or rich about him, yet he carried a quiet strength that she had never seen in any man from her old world. She asked him why he had chosen a life that was so hard. He looked at her and said, "Because it's mine. I build it, I fix it, and if it breaks, I start again." His words sank deep into her heart. She realized she had never built anything that was her own. Before they went to sleep, Luke gave her an extra blanket and said she could stay as long as she needed. When he closed the door behind him, Lily sat on the bed and stared at her borrowed clothes. She knew she could not stay forever hiding in this small town. But for now, this place and this man made her feel safe. For the first time, she felt like she was learning who she really was. The night air hummed outside and the little room smelled of warmth and oil. The world beyond that garage could wait. She finally closed her eyes and slept without fear. Days turned into weeks, and life in the small town slowly shaped itself into a pattern that felt calm and new to Lily. Every morning, sunlight touched the dusty windows of the garage, waking her with the smell of oil and the sound of tools clinking. She had traded silk dresses for jeans and old shirts, and strangely enough, she liked this new version of herself. The busy city that once ruled her life felt like a distant dream now. Here, no one cared about the Warren Empire, her father's power, or the wedding she had escaped. They only saw Lena, the quiet woman who helped Luke at the garage. Luke had grown used to her company. When she first arrived, he thought she would be soft and spoiled, but she surprised him each day. She learned quickly, asking questions about engines, watching carefully as he fixed them. At first her hands trembled when she held a wrench, but now they were steady. Her laughter filled the space between their work like sunlight falling through old glass. The people in the town started to notice them. When they walked to the small grocery store, some locals smiled and whispered friendly things. To them, Luke seemed happier, and Lena seemed like a mystery they liked. She always paid with small bills Luke gave her, never touching the black card hidden deep in her bag. Her father's world was searching for her, though she did not know how close they were. Newspapers still printed stories about the missing heiress. Far away in the city, the noise never reached this quiet valley. Each afternoon, Luke took her to the diner across the road. The owner, an old woman named Martha, always gave them an extra piece of pie and teased that they made a good pair. Lily would smile, a soft blush coloring her cheeks. Luke would pretend not to hear, but he could not hide the small smile that followed. One evening, while they closed up the garage, Lily found an old radio on a shelf. It was broken, so she tried to fix it using what Luke had taught her. After a few minutes, the soft sound of music filled the room. Luke looked up from his work, surprised. She grinned proudly. "Look, I did it." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You did better than most of my trainees," he said. For the first time in her life, she felt proud of something she had built with her own hands. At night, they would sit outside under the starry sky behind the garage. The air smelled of grass and distant rain. Luke told her stories of his childhood, about his mother who used to sing to him before bed. She told him about her favorite books and how she used to read them under her blanket when she was supposed to sleep. They laughed at small things and sat silently at times too, comfortable even in quiet. Yet inside her heart, Lily felt a growing worry. Each time she looked at Luke's kind eyes, she felt the truth rise in her throat. He still didn't know who she was. He thought she was a runaway from some small trouble, not the daughter of a billionaire hiding from an empire. The lie sat heavy inside her. Sometimes she almost told him, but then fear stopped her. What if he looked at her differently? What if he sent her away because he could never belong in her world of chandeliers and business meetings? One afternoon, a man from a nearby city stopped at the garage with a flat tire. He wore a suit and carried a tablet. When he saw Lily handing Luke tools, he paused. "You look familiar," he said slowly, squinting at her. Lily's stomach turned cold. She forced a smile and said, "I don't think so, sir." Luke glanced at her, noticing the sudden tension. The man shrugged and left after paying. When the car drove off, Lily pressed her hand to her heart, feeling it thumped fast. Luke studied her quietly, but said nothing. That night she hardly slept, certain her hidden world was getting closer. The next weekend, a town festival filled the air with laughter and lights. Luke took her there after closing the garage, saying she needed a break. They walked among food stalls and music. Children ran around with glowing sticks, and an old band played near the square. Lily watched the lights dance in Luke's eyes and forgot her fear for a moment. They shared cotton candy and she laughed like a child again. It was the kind of joy she had never known at grand parties with chandeliers and champagne. Here everything was simple and real. When the night grew quiet, they walked by the river. The reflection of lanterns moved gently on the water. Luke stopped and looked at her for a long time. "You've changed this place," he said softly. "It feels warmer since you came." Lily looked at him, then lowered her eyes, not trusting her voice. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she smiled through it. "But you make me feel seen," she whispered. In that simple moment, everything else vanished. Empire she had fled, the wealth she had left behind, all seemed far away. What remained was the soft rhythm of the river and the truth forming quietly between them. She knew that soon she would have to face her past, but for now she wanted to keep this fragile peace intact. It was the first time in her life she felt free, even while she lived inside a lie. The sun was bright that morning, and the air smelled of new paint and gasoline. Luke had been fixing an old car since sunrise, while Lily cleaned tools nearby. It was the kind of morning they both liked, because it felt normal and peaceful. She hummed a small tune as she worked, her hair tied back. Her hands no longer the soft hands of a rich girl, but the hands of someone used to honest tasks. Luke watched her for a moment and smiled to himself, though he quickly turned back to his work when she looked up.
Ow.
A truck stopped outside the garage, and two strangers stepped out. They were dressed well, one wearing sunglasses, though the sun was still low. The older man looked around before walking closer. Luke straightened up, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man spoke politely but firmly. "We're looking for someone. A young woman, early 20s, light hair, might be using a different name. Have you seen anyone like that?" His gaze moved quickly toward Lily. Luke felt tension rise in the air. Lily's face turned pale, and she froze beside the toolbox. Before Luke could say anything, the other man showed a photograph. It was Lily, wearing a gown like the one she had run away in. The picture looked like one taken from a news article. Under it, Luke could just see the words missing, "Heiress Lily Warren." His heart went still. He glanced at her again, and she could not meet his eyes. She took a step back, shaking slightly. The man lowered the photo. "If you see her, contact us." "Her family is worried sick," he said, and handed Luke a card.
Ow.
Then they left, leaving dust swirling behind their car. Luke turned slowly toward Lily. She stood near the door, her hands clutched tightly together. For a long moment, no one spoke. The sound of birds outside filled the silence. Finally, Luke asked quietly, "Who are you really?" Her voice came out so soft that it broke with each word. "I didn't mean to lie. My real name is Lily Warren. My father owns a large company. I ran away because I didn't want to marry the man he chose for me. I wanted to live free, even if it was for a short time." Luke stepped back, his eyes wide with disbelief. He looked around the humble garage at his rough hands, at her borrowed clothes. The truth hit him like a cold wind. "So all this time, you've been hiding who you are," he said quietly. Lily tried to reach for him. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to be seen as myself, not as a name or a fortune. The days here with you were the only time I felt real." He moved away, shaking his head slowly. "You think it's easy for me to believe that? You came from a world that could buy everything I have 100 times? Tears filled Lily's eyes. "Your world gave me something money never could," she said. But Luke turned away and walked toward the back of the garage. "I need time," he said simply. "I don't even know what to think right now." Lily sat down on a wooden crate, feeling the weight of her secret crush her. Her chest hurt, not because she feared being found, but because she might have lost the one person who had seen her heart instead of her last name. That afternoon, her father's men returned. This time, there were more cars, sleek and black, their tires grinding the gravel. A tall man in a dark coat stepped out. It was Mr. Warren himself. He looked angry, worried, and relieved all at once when he saw her. "Lily," he said sharply, "you've caused enough embarrassment. Get in the car. We're going home." She shook her head, standing firm, though her voice trembled. "Home. That place was never home, Father." Mr. Warren's expression softened slightly, but his voice stayed cold. "You can explain later. For now, come with us." Luke came out from behind the garage, his jaw tight. His eyes met hers. She could see that he was still hurt but also protective. Mr. Warren noticed him and frowned. "Who are you?" he asked. "Just someone who helped your daughter when she needed it," Luke replied. Her father looked around the messy garage with disapproval. "This is where you've been, living among grease and rust. Lily, do you understand what this did to your reputation?" She looked at Luke and then back at her father. "What it did was show me what a real life feels like," she said. Mr. Warren sighed and gestured to the car. "Please, enough of this madness." Lily turned to Luke again, her voice trembling. "I didn't lie to fool you. I wanted to live, not hide. Thank you for giving me that." Then she walked toward the car. The convoy disappeared down the road soon after, leaving behind silence and the faint smell of dust. Luke stood at the doorway, watching the space where the cars had passed. He felt something heavy in his chest. Everything in the garage looked the same, yet nothing felt the same anymore. He picked up the photo the men had dropped. It showed Lily in her wedding gown, smiling like someone he no longer recognized. The sound of rain began again, light but steady. Luke looked up at the gray sky and whispered under his breath, "She was never meant for this world." Still, in his heart, he hoped that the girl who had called herself Lena would find her way back. Not as a stranger, but as herself. Months passed since Lily had left the small town. The garage stood the same, with its scent of oil and metal, but Luke felt it emptier now. He still worked long hours, fixing cars, wiping grease off his hands, and pretending that everything was as it had been before. Yet every corner of the place seemed to hold a memory of her. He could almost hear her laughter when she managed to fix a part on her own, or see her sitting in the corner drinking coffee from the old tin cup. Some nights he caught himself looking at the empty stool near the door, expecting her to walk in again. The newspapers had told the rest of the story. The missing heiress had been found. There had been pictures of her standing beside her father at a press meeting, her face calm but her eyes shadowed. Luke had looked at that image once, and then turned the page, pretending not to care. But in truth, something in him hurt. He had lost more than a mysterious girl. He had lost the only person who had made his quiet life suddenly feel full. Far away in the city, Lily Warren was no longer the frightened daughter who had run away from an arranged wedding. But her time with Luke had changed her, shaping her into someone stronger. She had refused to return to her old ways. With steady courage, she told her father she would not marry the man he had chosen. The media had moved on quickly, and business continued as usual. But she no longer cared for dinner parties or designer dresses. She had begun to build something different with her new sense of freedom. Part of her new plan was to help others who felt trapped as she once did. Yet even as she sat in rooms full of people, her thoughts often drifted to that little garage by the road, to the man who had seen her as a person before he ever knew her name. Every sound of rain against her window reminded her of the night he had stopped for her in his truck. Each story of kindness she read reminded her of his quiet patience. Weeks turned into months, and she knew she could not stay away forever. One morning, Luke was working on a small car when he heard wheels rolling over gravel outside. He wiped his hands and looked out, expecting another customer. What he saw made his heart stop for a moment. A sleek silver car parked near the gate, and Lily stepped out. She was dressed simply in jeans and a plain shirt, no jewelry, no makeup fit for cameras. Her face looked calm, but her eyes held that same gentle light he had once known. Luke stood still as she walked closer. For a moment neither spoke. The sounds of the town faded behind them. Then she smiled, a soft and honest smile. "You look the same," she said. "I could say the same for you," Luke replied quietly. "The last time you were wearing half a wedding dress and a lot of mud," she laughed. And the sound made the silence between them warm again. "I miss this place," she said, looking around. "And I missed you." Luke wanted to ask her why she had come back, but his voice failed him. She seemed to understand. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper. "I read about a mechanic in this town once who fixed more than cars," she said with a faint smile. "He helped someone fix her life." He looked down at the ground, unsure what to say. "That was you, not me," he said after a while. "You had it in you the whole time." She stepped closer and shook her head. "No one ever believed I could live without my father's name until you looked at me like I could. You showed me what freedom feels like." He met her eyes then, and for the first time in weeks, he felt peace. The distance that wealth and class had built seemed smaller now. The world outside could still whisper about the heiress who disappeared once, but inside the garage, none of that mattered. They spent the afternoon talking. She told him about the charity foundation she had started to help young people find new chances. He told her about the garage and how he had fixed it up since she left. When a light rain began outside, she helped him close the doors, just like before. The smell of rain mixed with oil again, bringing memories rushing back. When evening came, Luke walked her to the truck, still standing beside the wall. It was the same one he had driven that stormy night. She turned to him and said softly, "This time, I didn't come because I was running away. I came because I was running home." He looked at her, unsure what to say. His rough hands brushed against hers, as if asking a question without words. She smiled and took his hand properly this time. There was no need for promises, no need for talk of wealth or status. In that quiet moment, the world felt smaller, and everything that mattered stood in that garage between them. The rain fell gently outside, tapping on the roof in a steady rhythm. For Luke and Lily, it no longer sounded like an ending, but a beginning. The runaway bride and the poor mechanic were no longer from two different worlds. They were simply two people who had found, through loss and courage, a kind of love that could outlast storms, its lies, and even time itself.